By the time you finish this video, you will have 10 specific rules that Stoic philosophers use to discipline their minds before sunrise, rules almost nobody actually follows because they're not comfortable, they're not aesthetic, and they don't film well for social media. This isn't a morning routine video. Morning routines are about optimizing your schedule. This is about something older and harder, training your mind before the world gets a chance to train it for you. Here's the blunt claim to start with the version of winning the morning you've seen online. The cold plunge, the 5-mile run, the 50-page book before 6 a.m. is mostly performance, and it's not what actually built discipline in the people who first wrote about this 2000 years ago. And here's the open loop. Later in this video, I'll show you why the most disciplined rule on this entire list has nothing to do with waking up early at all, and why chasing an early wake-up time is exactly the trap that makes most people quit by week 2. If that surprises you, type before 8 in the comments right now. Let's begin. Your alarm goes off and the first thing that happens isn't a thought. It's a flinch, a small, involuntary bracing against the day before you've even opened your eyes. You reach for your phone before your feet touch the floor, and in the next 90 seconds you've absorbed a headline, a message from a coworker, a photo of someone else's vacation, and a faint, wordless sense that you're already behind. You haven't stood up yet, you haven't had water, and your nervous system has already been hijacked by inputs you didn't choose. By the time you're in the shower, you're rehearsing a conversation you're dreading. By the time you're in the car or on the train, you're irritated at a text from your mother, replaying an argument that hasn't even happened yet. You get to your desk and you're reactive before 9 a.m., answering emails in a slightly defensive tone, snapping faster than usual at a colleague's harmless question, running on a kind of low-grade adrenaline that feels like productivity but is actually just static. The cost of this isn't dramatic, it's cumulative. You're spending your sharpest hours of the day, the ones with the most clarity and willpower, reacting to other people's agendas instead of setting your own. By 8 a.m. most days, you've already lost something you can't get back: the ability to choose your first move. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire under constant military and political pressure, wrote to himself before dawn, essentially rehearsing the day's difficulties in advance, not to worry about them, but to meet them already composed, so that when irritation or bad news arrived, it found him prepared rather than ambushed. He understood something most people never test. The first hour doesn't just start your day, it sets the operating conditions for every hour after it. Here's the core idea, and it's a single discipline. You do not owe the world your first hour. Whoever or whatever gets access to your attention first, your phone, your inbox, someone else's mood, the news effectively gets to set the emotional and mental tone for everything that follows. Because your mind runs on momentum, not on a fresh reset every few minutes. Protect the first hour and you're not managing your morning. You're managing the entire day's trajectory before it even starts. Let me be clear about what this doesn't mean. It doesn't mean waking up at 4:30 a.m., doing a 2-hour routine and posting about it. Waking up early is not the discipline, it's a tool some people use, and for plenty of people it's the wrong tool entirely, especially if it just produces a groggy, resentful version of the same reactive morning, only earlier. This also doesn't mean cutting yourself off from other people or refusing to check anything important before a set time, no matter the cost. Rigidity for its own sake isn't stoic, it's just another performance. What we're talking about is sequencing, deciding what gets first access to your mind, on purpose, before the day decides it for you. Compare that to what modern morning culture actually rewards. It rewards visible intensity, the 5 a.m. gym video, the elaborate green smoothie, the 7-step routine with a name and a hashtag, all addition, all performance, all measured by how much you can show. Almost none of it addresses the one variable that actually determines whether your mind is disciplined or scattered by 8 a.m., which is simply, what did you let in first and did you choose it? These 10 rules aren't about waking up earlier or doing more, they're about controlling sequence. Let's go through them, starting with the most accessible and building to the one that almost nobody actually has the nerve to practice. Rule 1, don't check your phone for the first 30 minutes you're awake. This is the most obvious rule on the list and also the most skipped, because the pull toward that first check feels less like a choice and more like a reflex, wired in by years of repetition. Every morning you reach for it, you're handing the day's first emotional input to whichever algorithm, headline, or stranger's opinion happens to load first. Epictetus taught that the first move in any situation is choosing what you allow to affect you, because once a thing has entered your attention, it's already begun shaping your state, whether or not you agreed to that. This lines up with priming in psychology. The earliest information you take in doesn't sit neutrally, it colors the interpretive lens you carry into everything that follows it for hours. The reframe. You're not undisciplined for feeling pulled toward the phone, you were simply never taught to guard the door before now. The action. Physically charge your phone outside the bedroom tonight, so the first 30 minutes tomorrow happen without it in reach. Rule 2. One level up, sit in silence for 5 minutes before you do anything productive. Not meditation with an app narrating it to you, actual unstructured silence. No input, no output, just you and the room. Most people find this nearly unbearable at first, which tells you exactly how loud your baseline has become. Picture trying it. 30 seconds in, your leg starts bouncing, your mind starts drafting a to-do list, and you feel a pull to just check something, anything, to make the quiet stop. Seneca wrote that a mind that cannot bear its own company has a bigger problem than boredom. It's a mind that's outsourced its entire sense of okayness to constant external noise. This connects to what researchers call attentional restoration, unstructured quiet. Time allows the mind's directed attention system, the part that's been working hard all the previous day, to actually recover, the same way muscles recover during rest rather than during more exercise. The reframe, the discomfort of sitting in silence, isn't a flaw in you. It's proof of exactly how loud your normal environment has been. The action: tomorrow, before touching anything, phone, coffee, conversation, sit for 5 minutes with nothing. Let it be uncomfortable. Rule 3. Write down what you cannot control today on purpose before the day supplies it to you uninvited. Most people's mornings get hijacked reactively: a traffic jam, a snippy email, a cancelled meeting, and each one lands like a small ambush because it wasn't anticipated. Try this instead. Before you leave the house, name 2 or 3 things that could go wrong today that are entirely outside your control. Marcus Aurelius did a version of this daily, essentially rehearsing friction in advance, encountering difficult people, delays, bad news specifically so none of it would catch him unprepared when it actually showed up. This is close to a technique psychologists call defensive pessimism, deliberately imagining setbacks in advance, which for many people reduces anxiety and improves performance because the mind has already metabolized the scenario instead of being ambushed by it in real time. The reframe: expecting friction isn't negativity, it's armor you put on before you need it, not after. The action: each morning this week, write 1 sentence naming something that might go wrong today that you can't control, and 1 sentence about how you'll respond if it does. Here's a question worth pausing on. How many of your worst mornings this year were actually caused by the event itself versus caused by how completely unprepared you were for something entirely predictable? Rule 4. Move your body before you consume anything. No food, no phone, no conversation, just movement. Even 5 minutes of it. This isn't about fitness. It's about signaling to your own nervous system, physically, that you are choosing to act before the day starts acting on you. Picture the difference between a body that goes straight from a warm bed into a chair, absorbing screens and stress, versus a body that gets even a short walk or a few minutes of stretching first. The second version enters the day already slightly ahead of its own inertia. Seneca praised deliberate physical discomfort in small doses: cold water, simple exertion, not for the discomfort itself, but because it trains the will to act before it feels like acting, which is the exact same muscle you need for every hard choice later in the day. This connects to what's sometimes described as an internal locus of control, the felt sense that your actions, not outside circumstances, are driving your outcomes, and physical movement chosen deliberately first thing is one of the fastest ways to reinforce that sense before anything else competes for it. The reframe: this isn't about becoming a morning athlete, it's about proving to yourself physically before 7 a.m. that you go first. The action: tomorrow, move your body for 5 minutes, walk, stretch, anything before you open your phone or eat. Rule 5. Eat or drink your first thing standing still, without multitasking, no scrolling, no scanning email, just the coffee or the food, fully. This sounds almost too small to matter, and that's exactly why almost nobody does it. Picture your actual habit: coffee in one hand, phone in the other, eyes flicking between a cup and a screen, absorbing 3 inputs at once before you've even said a full sentence out loud that day. Marcus Aurelius warned himself against a mind pulled in many directions at once, noting that the person who is everywhere at once is nowhere in particular, and that scattering your attention across small things all morning trains the same scattering you'll do later across big ones. This mirrors research on task switching costs. Every time attention shifts between unrelated inputs, there's a measurable cognitive tax paid in the transition, meaning that stacking your coffee with your inbox isn't efficient, it's just quietly expensive, dozens of times before 8 a.m. The reframe: doing one small thing with full attention isn't wasted time, it's training data for your brain on what focus actually feels like. The action: tomorrow, drink your coffee or tea with nothing else in your hands, just that. If you've made it this far, you already think differently than most people watching this, because the average viewer taps away right around now, the moment a list stops being easy and starts asking for actual behavior change before breakfast. So do one small thing for me: hit like on this video. It costs you 2 seconds and it tells me you want the second half of this list, which gets noticeably sharper. And remember what I told you at the start, the most disciplined rule on this entire list has nothing to do with waking up early, and it's about to completely reframe everything you think you know about morning discipline. Let's keep going. Rule 6. Decide your first task of the day the night before, not the morning of. This one is deceptively powerful, because most people's mornings are actually decided by decision fatigue before they've made a single real choice, standing in the kitchen wondering what to do first, checking a notification just to see, drifting into whatever feels easiest instead of whatever actually matters. Every one of those small hesitations burns willpower you'll need later. Epictetus taught that clarity about what's actually yours to do removes an enormous amount of unnecessary suffering. Most anxiety, he argued, comes not from the task itself, but from the fog of not having decided what the task even is yet. This lines up closely with decision fatigue research. Willpower and decision-making capacity function like a depletable resource across the day, and every small unnecessary choice you make in the first hour is quietly spent from the same tank you'll need for the hard choices at 3 p.m. The reframe, deciding your first task the night before, isn't over-controlling your life, it's refusing to spend your morning's limited willpower on a decision that didn't need to happen in real time. The action: tonight before bed, write down the single first task you'll do tomorrow morning, so there's no deciding left when you wake up. Rule 7. Say less in the first hour of your day, especially to people who bring their chaos into it early. There's always someone, a family member venting first thing, a co-worker offloading stress the second you walk in, a group chat already spiraling before 8 a.m. And the instinct is to absorb it fully, respond fully, match their energy out of habit or politeness. Notice what that costs you. You've handed the emotional tone of your morning to someone else's unmanaged mood, and you didn't even get a say in it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself repeatedly that other people's disturbed minds are not obligations he needed to inherit, that you can meet someone's chaos with steadiness instead of matching it, and that steadiness costs you far less than absorption does. This connects to emotional contagion moods spread between people in close proximity, often below conscious awareness, which means the first anxious or angry person you interact with each morning is quietly setting a portion of your emotional baseline unless you consciously interrupt the transfer. The reframe: staying calm around someone else's early chaos, isn't coldness, it's refusing an unpaid loan of their stress. The action: tomorrow morning, when someone brings tension to you early, respond in fewer words than you normally would, and notice how much less of it sticks to you. Let me stop here and ask you something direct. Of these 7 rules so far, which one felt the hardest to imagine actually doing tomorrow? Not the one that sounded nicest, the one that made you slightly uncomfortable just picturing it. Hold on to that. It's usually the one you need most. Rule 8. Face the hardest task of your day first, not last. Most people do the opposite: clear the easy, satisfying, low-stakes items first, saving the genuinely difficult task for later when energy is already lower and the day's accumulated friction has worn down the resolve to actually do it. By 2 p.m., the hard thing gets pushed to tomorrow, and tomorrow it happens again. Seneca observed that people don't actually lack the time or ability to do difficult things, they lack the willingness to do them while the will is still fresh. So they wait for a better moment that conveniently never arrives. This connects to what's sometimes called the path of least resistance in behavioral psychology. Without deliberate structure, people default to whatever requires the least immediate discomfort, which is precisely why the hardest task, left for later, reliably becomes the task that doesn't happen. The reframe: doing the hard thing first, isn't punishing yourself. It's using your highest willpower hours on the one task that actually needs them. The action: tomorrow, identify the single task you're most tempted to avoid and do it before anything else on your list. Rule 9, and here's where this list gets genuinely uncomfortable. Spend part of your morning doing something with no audience and no record of it, no post, no story, no mention to anyone, nothing that produces any evidence you did it. This cuts directly against a modern reflex, the urge to document effort as proof it happened, the quiet expectation that if nobody saw the workout or the reading or the deep work, some part of it doesn't fully count. Try removing the audience entirely from one part of your morning and notice how strange that feels, how much smaller the motivation gets the instant no one will ever know. That gap tells you something uncomfortable about where your discipline was actually coming from. Marcus Aurelius wrote almost his entire body of surviving work for an audience of exactly one person himself, treating private discipline as more real, not less, than anything done for recognition. This touches on intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Behavior driven by internal values tends to be more durable and self-sustaining over time than behavior driven by external reward or visibility. And morning routines built entirely for documentation often collapse the moment the audience's attention moves elsewhere. The reframe: an undocumented morning isn't a wasted one. It might be the only truly honest one you have all day. The action, tomorrow, do one part of your morning: reading, movement, quiet, anything with an absolute rule that you will never mention it to anyone. And rule 10, the sharpest one, the one I promised you at the start of this video: stop trying to wake up earlier and start trying to wake up the same. Not literally the same minute, every day, the same internal state, the same order of operations, the same sequence of choices, regardless of what time your eyes actually open. This is the rule almost nobody follows because it contradicts the entire premise most people bring to morning discipline, that the goal is an earlier and earlier wake-up time, an escalating badge of intensity. But an early wake-up built on inconsistent sequencing, sometimes phone first, sometimes silence first, sometimes chaos absorbed immediately, sometimes not, produces a scattered mind regardless of what hour it happens at. A late, consistent sequence beats an early, chaotic one every time, because discipline was never actually about the clock, it was about the order. Epictetus never once organized his teaching around a specific hour. He organized it entirely around what was within your control and what wasn't, and the hour you wake up is far less within your control given work, health, family, sleep, than the sequence of what you do once you're up. This connects to the psychological concept of habit stacking, and consistency affects behavior, becomes automatic and low effort, not primarily through intensity or extremity, but through repeated stable sequencing, which is precisely why a modest consistent order beats an extreme inconsistent one almost every single time over the long run. The reframe: you were never actually failing at discipline because you couldn't wake up at 5 a.m. You were failing because you kept changing what happened after you woke up. The action: forget your wake-up time completely for the next week. Instead, commit to the same first 3 moves in the same order, no matter what time you open your eyes. And here's the paradox that ties this whole list together, the twist I told you was coming. You came into this video probably expecting a list about becoming an early riser, about the discipline of getting up before the world does. And what you actually got was the opposite lesson. The clock was never the variable that mattered. The 1% this title refers to aren't the people who wake up at 4:30 a.m. Plenty of those people are just as reactive, just as scattered, just as owned by their phones. They've simply moved the whole chaotic pattern to an earlier hour and mistaken the earliness for discipline. The actual 1% are the ones who control sequence regardless of the clock, who decide on purpose every single day what gets first access to their attention, their body, their willpower, and their mood, whether that happens at 5 a.m. or 8 a.m. The obvious version of this challenge is waking up earlier. The real version, the one almost nobody has the nerve to actually practice because it offers no bragging rights and no visible proof, is choosing your sequence with total consistency regardless of what the clock says. That's the whole secret sitting underneath this entire list, and it's almost disappointing in its simplicity. Discipline was never about the hour, it was always about the order. So picture this. 6 months from now, your alarm goes off, whatever time that happens to be, and there's no flinch anymore. You don't reach for the phone first, it's not even a temptation you're fighting, it's just not the reflex anymore. You sit in 5 minutes of silence, and it's no longer unbearable, it's the calmest 5 minutes of your entire day, and you've started to actually crave it. You've already named mentally what might go wrong today, so when it does go wrong, it doesn't ambush you, it just arrives, expected, and you meet it already composed. You move your body before you consume anything. You do your hardest task first, while your will is still fresh. Instead of dragging it dreaded into the afternoon, someone brings their chaos to you early, and you notice it landing near you without fully landing on you. None of this makes your day easier. Meetings still get cancelled, people are still difficult, the inbox is still full. What's different is you steady before 8 a.m. regardless of what the day does next, because you were never trying to control the day. You were only ever training the order in which you meet it. Here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, forget about waking up earlier entirely. Pick 3 of these 10 rules, just 3, and do them in the exact same order every single morning, no matter what time you actually open your eyes. Because if this video leaves you with one line to remember, let it be this: the 1% aren't up before you. They're just in control of what happens first. If this landed, tell me which 3 rules you're stacking this week. Just list them in the comments. That's the entire ask. And if you want more of this kind of quiet, unglamorous discipline, subscribe, because that's exactly what this channel is built on. Thank you for staying through the whole thing. Discipline first, clock second.